Welcome to another Marketing Strategy Management mini training module. Today's topic is a value chain approach for marketing. In this module, we're going to introduce the concept of a value chain approach for marketing. Our intent is to explain what it is and also the rationale for using it. Let's start with the rationale for using it. In an earlier module, we defined value as the perceived benefits relative to the price or cost. We then took that idea and further dissected it. We talked about the motives that can underlie customer desires, and we explained the considerations that coincide with the price or cost side of the equation. We concluded this discussion with the notion that if you mix these elements together just right, it creates value fulfillment. In this module, we'll expand on the idea of value fulfillment by saying that it doesn't begin or end with just the product or the service, but rather it includes the entire customer experience. In other words, value fulfillment involves every single point of contact between a business and its customers. As a result, it becomes important to nurture the perception of value at each touch point along the way. This is where the notion of a value chain comes into play. Here is a graphic illustration of a generic value chain for marketing. As you can see, it's comprised of several components. In a moment, I'll walk you through each one. But first, let's start with an overview. Basically, the generic value chain is a management tool for modeling the customer experience as it pertains to your product or service. The goal is to make sure that every aspect of the customer experience supports the value fulfillment objective. So what does it mean to model the customer experience? In this case, you're breaking it down into its component parts and then assembling them in a manner that is consistent with achieving success. The metaphor of a chain reinforces the idea that the path from product to market will only be as good as its weakest link. For example, let's say you have a great product, but you're unable to consistently deliver it on time and in good condition. Under this circumstance, would it matter that your product is better than any other one like it? With that overview in mind, let's now go through the value chain piece by piece, beginning at the lower left with the market characteristics. This component is about identifying the customer needs and motives that we talked about in the definition of value. It's the perceived benefits relative to the price or cost. This information will become a focal point for assembling the rest of the value chain. The idea of starting at this end of the chain is often referred to as an outside-in approach for creating value. One important facet of this approach is to recognize how motives and needs might translate into different customer segments. For example, a sports car enthusiast is likely to have one set of expectations, while an economy car owner is likely to expect something else. If you intend to serve both segments, the differences between them will need to be reflected in the value chain. Next is the distribution channels component. This is the delivery path from the provider to the customer. Each dissimilar pathway represents a different distribution channel. If we look at the video rental industry, for example, we can see multiple distribution channels. Some people rent DVDs from a video store, some get them from a kiosk in the supermarket, others download movies from the internet, or they receive them through the postal service. Each distribution channel comes with its own set of considerations and its own value fulfillment potential. The next component is the communications commitment. This is about conveying information, managing expectations, and, especially now that we have social media, creating dialogue. Every organization has internal communications responsibilities and external communication responsibilities. Though both are aimed at achieving the same ultimate purpose, the nature of the communications will greatly differ between them. Next is the transactions and operations component. This one supports the business aspects of the marketing function by attempting to use the organization's resources as effectively as possible. It typically involves the processes and workflows that exist between the two ends of the value chain. One key objective is to make sure you have all the necessary processes and workflows in place. A second objective is to streamline them without doing harm to customer fulfillment. The performance of these activities is likely to be evaluated in terms of cost, productivity, and efficiency measures. The next component of the value chain is the product service attributes. This one pretty much speaks for itself. In essence, you've identified a need in the market, and this component is at the core of how you intend to fill it. Now let's go to the box that sits just below the value chain. It's called external forces. These are the contextual conditions that impact your value chain. Some may be favorable, others may be unfavorable. The likelihood is that all of them will be outside of your control. Even so, it's important to be aware of them. A common practice is to analyze the external forces in conjunction with the market characteristics before deciding on what to do with the value chain. Some examples of external forces include political factors, such as government regulations that require compliance, economic factors, social lifestyle factors, technological factors, demographic factors, and cultural factors. One that I'd like to emphasize a little bit more than the others is the competition. In addition to serving customer motives and needs, you may also need to seek a competitive advantage. This one factor alone can have a tremendous influence on what you must do with the value chain in order to achieve success. So now we're back where we started when we first set out to introduce the concept of a value chain approach. As you can see, it's focused on the whole customer experience rather than just a single part of it, and it emphasizes value fulfillment based on customer motives and needs. At this point, I'd like to shift gears and summarize the benefits of using the value chain now that we know what it is. The first of these is that it helps to identify all the critical links and alignments associated with the marketing function, including the external factors that bear upon it. Second, it conditions people to think in the broader context of how all the pieces and parts of a marketing strategy fit together. And third, it encourages a continuous and systematic strategy analysis process. You can evaluate the chain to determine what's working, what's not working, what can be fixed, and perhaps what you're unable to do, and whether you can get by without doing it in light of customer needs and the competition. And that concludes this module. For more information about this and related subjects, go to marketingstrategymanagement.com. Thanks, and see you next time.